The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as the final vote registered. The massive holographic display showed a sea of red indicators. The motion to isolate Earth had passed with overwhelming support. Zolthran, the Council's supreme arbiter, gazed down at the representatives of over 200 spacefaring civilizations with satisfaction. The humans have made their choice, Zolthran announced, his four arms spreading wide in a gesture that encompassed the entire chamber. By rejecting our guidance, they choose the path of the primitive. History has shown what happens to species who refuse Council protection. The assembled representatives murmured their agreement. Humans had proven troublesome since first contact 50 years earlier. They questioned too much, demanded unreasonable autonomy, and worst of all, developed technologies along paths the Council had forbidden. On the observation deck above the chamber, Lieutenant Daniel Morris washed with a hollow feeling in his stomach. As one of the few human liaisons still permitted on Galactic Central, he knew what came next. His communication device vibrated. The message he'd been dreading had arrived. Earth has initiated the Exodus decree, Daniel whispered to his colleague. Ambassador Lisa Winters nodded grimly. Then we proceed as planned. Below, Zolthran continued addressing the Council. The quarantine barrier will be established within one standard cycle. Earth will be permitted no further expansion, no access to hyperspace corridors, and no communication with civilized species. They may reflect on their mistake until they accept our wisdom. The Council members approved with gestures specific to their species, tentacles waving, wings fluttering, eye stalks pulsing with colored light. 3 days later, Daniel stood at his monitoring station as the greatest migration in human history began. Millions of ships lifted from Earth's surface in a carefully orchestrated departure that had been planned in secret for years. They're really doing it, said Counselor Vrax, a squid-like being who had been assigned to observe Daniel. Your species would rather abandon their homeworld than accept our guidance. Foolishness. Daniel kept his expression neutral. Humans value self-determination. Self-destruction, you mean? Vrax replied with a dismissive ripple of his tentacles. Those vessels cannot possibly sustain your population. Most aren't even equipped with proper FTL drives by Council standards. On the screens, the armada of human ships formed up beyond Mars. There were vessels of every size. Massive colony ships constructed in orbit, converted freighters, military vessels, and countless smaller craft. Nearly 7 billion humans had chosen to leave rather than live under Council restrictions. The Council gave humanity a choice, submit or be isolated, Daniel said quietly. We chose a third option. Vrax laughed, a gurgling sound. Your ships will fail within a few light years. Your people will die in the void between stars. This is suicide. The communication system chimed as Ambassador Winters requested an open channel to the Council. Zolthran granted it with obvious reluctance. Lisa's face appeared on screens throughout the chamber. Galactic Council, we deliver our final message as residents of this region of space. Humanity will not be confined. We will not be controlled. We walk our own path. Before Zolthran could respond, the human armada activated their drives simultaneously. The energy surge briefly overwhelmed the Council's sensors. When the screens cleared, the ships were gone, vanished from detection range, in a manner that Council technology couldn't explain. A primitive cloaking attempt, Zolthran declared after consulting with his scientists. They cannot have gone far. Deploy observer drones to track them. But the drones found nothing. In the following weeks, a few human vessels were detected at the edges of inhabited space, but the bulk of humanity had seemingly disappeared. In the Council chambers, celebration began. The human problem had solved itself. They're doomed, Vrax told Daniel confidently. No species can survive without the Council's guidance. Daniel only smiled. Perhaps. But humans have always been full of surprises. 50 years after the human exodus, strange reports began filtering into Galactic Council headquarters. At first, they were dismissed as rumors, odd sightings at the outer edges of Council space. unusual energy signatures, and unregistered ships that vanished before identification. Krill, a senior scientist in the Council's Anomaly Division, sat hunched over his workstation examining the latest data, his gray skin wrinkled with concentration as he compared energy patterns from an unexplained phenomenon in the sickness sector. "This matches the theoretical output of human phase shift technology," he muttered, his 6 fingers tapping nervously. "But they never developed this. We made sure of it." His assistant looked up from her own screen. "Could it be convergent development from another species?" "Impossible," Krell said. "The pattern is identical to those experimental human prototypes we documented before they left. But they were primitive attempts, nothing functional." On the frontier trading outpost Vega 7, Commander Olivia Carter walked through a market that officially didn't exist. The station was registered as a minor mining operation, but in reality, it served as a meeting point between Council space and whatever lay beyond. A hooded figure approached her. "The shipment arrived safely." Olivia nodded. 20 refugees, as promised. "They'll have new identities by morning." "And the Council inspectors?" "Safely misdirected. They won't be back for another month." She smiled faintly. "The human diaspora continues to grow." The figure nodded. "We've established 3 new settlements beyond the Perseus Gap. Council ships don't patrol there." What neither of them knew was that a Council surveillance drone had captured their conversation. Back on Galactic Central, Supreme Arbiter Xalthrin, now elderly but still commanding the Council after 50 years, reviewed the footage with growing irritation. "Humans," he spat the word like a curse. "Scattered survivors, nothing more. These secret colonies they've established can't possibly thrive without access to Council technology networks." His aide, much younger and less certain, viewed the evidence differently. "The reports are increasing. Supreme Arbiter, we've discovered 18 unauthorized settlements that show human influence, and there are signs of advanced technology development." Xalthrin waved a dismissive hand. "Primitive copies of inferior designs. Let them hide in the shadows of civilization. They chose their path." Meanwhile, in the small colony of New Haven, settled on a seemingly uninhabitable moon beyond Council space, engineer Ryan Bennett made final adjustments to a dimensional anchor. The device, small enough to fit in his palm, but powerful enough to bend spacetime, represented technology the Council had deemed impossible. "We're ready for the next jump," he told the colony's governor, Patricia Russell. "The beacon network confirms safe passage to the Andromeda coordinates." Patricia nodded, remembering Earth and the ultimatum that had forced humanity into its greatest gamble. "Prepare the colonists. We move at dawn." By morning, their entire settlement, 5,000 people with all their belongings and structures, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind perfectly undisturbed terrain as if they had never existed at all. 3 days later, on a Council monitoring station, an analyst intercepted a partial message. "The diaspora thrives." The analyst reported it as probable smuggler code. On Galactic Central, Xalthrin maintained his daily ritual, checking the monitoring feeds of Earth's empty solar system. The blue-green planet continued its lonely orbit, apparently abandoned. The Council maintained the quarantine barriers, though they seemed unnecessary with no human activity detected for decades. "We were right," Xalthrin told himself, staring at the image of Earth. "They couldn't survive without us." But that night, the Anomaly Division logged 67 unexplained energy signatures across 20 sectors of space, each lasting less than 3 seconds, too brief to track, but identical in pattern. 150 years after the human exodus, the Galactic Council faced an uncomfortable reality. Technological progress had slowed to a crawl. The great innovations that had once cemented Council authority were becoming increasingly rare, while reports of advanced technology from independent worlds grew more frequent. Council investigator William Hayes, a third-generation human who had chosen to remain in Council space, landed his unmarked vessel on Tarsus Prime, a planet at the edge of regulated territory. The settlement before him wasn't on any official maps. Another ghost port, William muttered as he walked through streets filled with technologies the Council claimed didn't exist. Energy systems with impossible efficiency powered the colony. Ships with hull configurations that defied conventional physics sat in the makeshift spaceport. A merchant caught him examining a handheld device. Interested in dimensional communicators, stranger. Can talk to anyone, anywhere, no matter the distance. No Council relays needed. Where did this come from? William asked, keeping his voice casual. The merchant shrugged. Trade routes from the diaspora. The free humans make them. William had heard this answer too many times to count. After decades of denial, the Council had finally admitted that humans hadn't perished in deep space as predicted. But they continued to downplay the significance of scattered human colonies. That illusion was becoming harder to maintain. On the Council homeworld, Economic Minister Shella reviewed the latest reports with growing alarm. The Targan Empire's economy has collapsed, she announced to the emergency session. Their entire banking system failed overnight. Supreme Director Varnus, Salthrin's successor, leaned forward. The Targans were our strongest military ally. How could this happen? Their quantum currency was compromised, Shella explained. Someone introduced an algorithm that made their encryption worthless. Their financial system fell apart in hours. No one spoke the obvious. The Targans had been preparing to attack settlements suspected of harboring human refugees. This cannot be coincidence, Varnus finally said. Across the galaxy, seemingly unrelated events continued to unfold. Trading posts appeared and disappeared without warning. Critical resources became suddenly abundant in previously struggling regions. Planets that had once depended on Council technology found themselves self-sufficient. In a classified laboratory, Council physicist Alan Peters studied a captured piece of technology. It's definitely human-designed philosophy, he told his superior. But they've developed a completely different approach to physics. This device manipulates dimensional boundaries. What does that mean in practical terms? His superior asked. Alan hesitated. It means humans didn't just leave Council space. They may have left our dimensional plane entirely. The implications stunned the research team. If humans had mastered dimensional phasing, they could exist alongside Council territories, invisible and untouchable. On a remote agricultural world, farmer Maria Nelson watched the night sky as 6 new stars suddenly appeared, then vanished just as quickly. She knew what they really were. Massive human colony ships briefly phasing into normal space during their journey. Maria entered her modest home and activated a hidden panel beneath her floorboards. The dimensional communicator inside connected her instantly to a vast network spanning thousands of light years. This is Waypoint Guardian. Crossing confirmed successful. All vessels have re-entered the shift. The response came immediately. Acknowledged, Guardian. The new colony will establish Anchor Point 437 by tomorrow. Meanwhile, William Hayes completed his investigation on Tarsus Prime. His official report would say he found nothing unusual. Smugglers using stolen technology, nothing more. His real report, transmitted through channels unknown to the Council, told a different story. Diaspora network expanding. Council influence declining in outer sectors. Request permission to begin Phase 3. The response took only seconds despite crossing what would normally be thousands of light years. Permission granted. The convergence approaches. Back on the Council homeworld, the governing body voted to increase military patrols along the borders of their territory, unaware that what they feared most was already among them, operating on a level they couldn't detect or comprehend. The silent revolution had already won. 200 years after the human exodus, the Galactic Council chambers no longer impressed as they once had. The Grand Hall, designed to showcase the Council's supremacy, now felt hollow as representatives from only 73 worlds attended, less than half the original membership. Supreme Director Varnus struggled to maintain order as delegates argued loudly about the latest crisis. 3 more worlds had declared independence in the past month alone. The Council cannot function if members simply walk away when it suits them. Varnus shouted, his patience exhausted. A delegate from the Proxima Federation stood. Perhaps they leave because the Council no longer provides value. My world receives better technology through independent traders than through official Council channels. Everyone knew what remained unspoken. Those independent traders were connected to the human diaspora. In her private laboratory on Centauri Station, Council scientist Amanda Foster worked in secret. For 20 years, she had studied the fragments of human technology that occasionally appeared in Council space. Today, she was close to a breakthrough. It's not technology as we understand it, she explained to Nathan Clark, a trusted Council security agent. Humans didn't just improve their ships or weapons. They fundamentally changed how they interact with reality. Nathan studied the strange device on her workbench. It appeared to shift slightly when viewed from different angles, as if not fully present in normal space. Dimensional shift technology, he asked. Amanda nodded. The humans didn't flee into deep space. They moved sideways, into parallel dimensional planes that exist alongside our own. They'd been here all along, just slightly out of phase with our reality. That's impossible, Nathan replied automatically, but his eyes told a different story. He had seen too many inexplicable events over the years. Not impossible, Amanda said. The math was theoretically sound even before they left. The Council banned research in this area because it couldn't be controlled centrally. Nathan made his decision. Show me everything. 3 days later, Nathan's security clearance was used to access a forbidden sector of Council space. Then his tracker went offline. The Council declared him rogue and dispatched pursuit vessels, but they found no trace of his ship. What they couldn't know was that Nathan's vessel hadn't traveled far in conventional space. It had shifted sideways, guided by Amanda's experimental device. When Nathan regained consciousness, he found himself in a medical facility unlike any he had seen. The technology was clearly advanced beyond Council standards, yet strangely familiar in design. "Welcome to New Terra," said a man in a simple white uniform. "I'm Dr. Kevin Miller. You're the first Council official to visit us officially." "How?" Nathan began, struggling to process what he was seeing through the large window. A massive city that seemed to shimmer slightly, as if not quite solid. "Your dimensional shift was rough, because your vessel wasn't designed for it," Kevin explained. "We've been able to move between dimensional planes seamlessly for over a century now." "So humans never left," Nathan said, finally understanding. "You've been here all along, building this." Kevin smiled. "The human diaspora spans multiple dimensional planes now. We have hundreds of colonies, trading networks, and yes, we've been observing the Council. We had to ensure you wouldn't follow and try to control us here too." In the following days, Nathan was introduced to the leadership of New Terra. He learned that humans had developed a civilization far beyond what the Council had achieved, free from the restrictions that had stifled innovation. "We want to establish official contact now," explained Governor Diane Miller. "The Council is fracturing, and the power vacuum could lead to conflict. We believe it's time for a new approach." When Nathan asked why humans had waited so long, the answer surprised him. "We needed to be strong enough that the Council couldn't threaten us," Diane said, "but also wise enough not to seek revenge for the past. It took generations to achieve both." 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council received an unprecedented message, an official communication from the United Human Diaspora, requesting a meeting to discuss the future of galactic civilization. The dimensional barriers were finally coming down. The Galactic Council's emergency session stretched into its 4th day as representatives tried to comprehend the revelations brought by human ambassador Ethan Miller. The chamber, once the proud heart of galactic governance, now felt like a relic as Miller's presentation continued. "The diaspora network isn't just a collection of colonies," Ethan explained, gesturing to the holographic display, showing thousands of interconnected points of light. "It's a new type of civilization that exists across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously." Council representatives watched in stunned silence. Some were openly hostile, others curious, but all were shocked by the scale of what humans had built while the Council believed them to be struggling refugees. "Impossible," muttered Supreme Director Varnus. "No species could develop such technology independently." Ethan smiled patiently. The Council's fundamental mistake was believing that technological progress must follow a single path. Your path. When humans walked away, we explored directions of research the Council had forbidden. Dimensional physics was just the beginning. The display shifted to show the true extent of human achievement. Vast cities existing partially out of phase with normal space, transportation networks that ignored conventional distances, and energy systems that drew power from the dimensional boundaries themselves. Captain Samantha Reed, formerly a loyal council officer who had helped Nathan Clark make contact with the diaspora, stood at the back of the chamber observing the reactions. She had seen the truth firsthand during her visit to New Terra, and now watched as her former colleagues struggled with the same revelations. "They never needed war," she whispered to Nathan, who stood beside her. "Humans conquered the galaxy without firing a shot." Nathan nodded. "They used economics and technology instead of weapons. Every time the Council tried to assert control over a region, human traders would appear offering better alternatives." In the years since first contact with the diaspora, the truth had become increasingly clear. The human shadow economy had been systematically undermining Council authority for generations. Trade routes, technological innovations, even cultural exchanges, all had been subtly guided by human influence from their dimensional havens. After Ethan's presentation concluded, the Council's Science Division requested permission to visit Earth. The humans agreed, and a delegation departed the following week. What they found shocked even the most cynical Council members. Earth was not the abandoned wasteland they had expected. Instead, the planet had been transformed into a memorial, a perfectly preserved monument to where humanity had begun. "We never abandoned Earth," explained the site curator, Jane Wilson. "We simply shifted it slightly out of phase with your dimension to protect it from interference. It has been here all along, a reminder of our origins and our choice to seek our own path." As news spread throughout Council space, the political landscape transformed rapidly. Worlds that had been considering leaving the Council now did so openly, seeking alliances with the human diaspora instead. Others demanded the Council reform to embrace the new reality. In a private meeting with what remained of the Council leadership, Ethan made the humans' position clear. "We don't seek revenge for the past. We don't want to replace the Council as galactic overlords. We want cooperation based on mutual respect and freedom of choice." "And if we refuse?" asked Councillor Jen, one of the few hardliners remaining. "Then you'll continue to fade into irrelevance," Ethan replied simply. "Your empire is already hollow. Most of your member worlds maintain their relationship with you only for diplomatic reasons, while conducting their real economic and technological activities through the Diaspora Network." That night, in her quarters on Galactic Central, Samantha Reed received a secure communication from 58 Council worlds. They were formally requesting admission to the Diaspora Alliance and withdrawal from the Council. The message was clear. The Council's time was ending not with war or revolution, but with a simple acknowledgement of a reality that had existed for decades. Humanity had built their new civilization right under the Council's nose, or more accurately, slightly adjacent to it in dimensional space. And now the veil was finally being lifted. The collapse happened faster than anyone predicted. Within 6 months of the human diaspora's official revelation, the Galactic Council held emergency sessions in a chamber that echoed with emptiness. Only 29 representatives remained from the original 200. Supreme Director Varnus looked older than his years as he called the diminished assembly to order. "We must address the reality of our situation. The Council's authority has been compromised beyond repair." On the main display, reports streamed in from across formerly Council-controlled space. Trade routes had been completely reorganized around human dimensional gateway technology. Entire planetary economies had shifted to new systems of exchange. Military vessels that once enforced council edicts now drifted in orbit, crews uncertain whose orders to follow. "They destroyed us without firing a single shot," said Councillor Dren, the representative from Arcturus. "How did we not see this coming?" The answer was obvious to everyone present. The Council had built its power on controlling access to technology and resources. The human diaspora had simply created alternatives that made the Council irrelevant. In the frontier system of Rigel, Director Paul Wilson of the Diaspora Security Division monitored the latest intelligence reports. A group of Council loyalists had gathered a small fleet, the beginning of what they called the Galactic Remnant, and were planning strikes against human-allied worlds. "They still don't understand," Paul told his team. "They think this is about territory or military power." His deputy, a non-human refugee from Council space, nodded in agreement. "They cannot imagine power without control." Paul activated a secure channel to the Dimensional Monitoring Network. "Implement Protocol Aegis for the Rigel sector. Full protective measures, but no direct confrontation unless absolutely necessary." When the remnant fleet arrived at their first target, they found their weapons systems inexplicably offline, and their navigation computers redirecting them back to their point of origin. No human vessels ever appeared to challenge them. Back on Galactic Central, Varnus received the report with resignation. "They're not even bothering to fight us anymore." The true extent of human capabilities became clearer each day. Evidence emerged that the diaspora had been quietly preventing extinction-level events across the galaxy for decades, deflecting asteroids, neutralizing supernova radiation, even containing outbreaks of engineered bioweapons that Council scientists had thought impossible to control. "We were wrong about them," admitted Councillor Mira, one of the oldest members. "We thought they needed our guidance to survive, but they've been protecting us instead." On worlds throughout former Council space, dimensional gateways appeared, offering free passage to anyone seeking to join human allied territories. The message was always the same. All peaceful species were welcome, regardless of technological development or political history. In the Council chambers, Varnus called for a final vote. "The motion before us is to formally dissolve the Galactic Council and establish transition protocols for remaining member worlds." The vote was nearly unanimous. After 3 centuries of dominance, the Council would cease to exist. As representatives departed for the last time, Council historian Laura Peters recorded the final moments. "The irony is inescapable," she noted in her personal log. "The Council isolated humans because they feared them developing along different technological paths. In doing so, they created the very conditions that led to their unprecedented advancement and our eventual obsolescence." Outside the Council Tower, crowds gathered, not in protest, but in anticipation. Human representatives had announced that dimensional transport technology would be freely shared with all former Council worlds. "The era of artificial scarcity is over," declared Ethan Miller in a galaxy-wide broadcast. "The diaspora doesn't seek subjects or tribute. We seek neighbors and friends." As the Council's Grand Seal was removed from the government building, few noticed the small group of humans watching from nearby. Among them stood Amanda Foster and Nathan Clark, the scientists whose work had helped bridge the dimensional divide. "Was this your plan all along?" Nathan asked quietly. Amanda smiled. "Not a plan. An opportunity for everyone to find a better way forward." 300 years after humanity's exodus, the Grand Assembly Hall of the stellar Concordat hummed with activity. Representatives from over 500 species gathered under a ceiling that shifted between dimensions, showing glimpses of stars and worlds across multiple realities simultaneously. At the center of the assembly stood Grace Mitchell, current coordinator of human affairs. Unlike the Council leaders of old, she wore no special insignia or grand robes, just practical clothing that reflected the human preference for function over ceremony. 3 centuries ago, Grace began. Humanity made a choice that the old Council believed would lead to our extinction. Today, we gather not as rulers and subjects, but as equals in a galaxy that has learned to embrace diversity rather than fear it. The assembled representatives, many from species that had once been bitter enemies, responded with their various signs of approval and respect. Among them sat Tevnar, the last surviving member of the original Galactic Council that had voted to isolate Earth. Now ancient even by his species' standards, he had requested permission to address the assembly. "I was wrong," Tevnar said simply when given the floor. "We were all wrong. We believed that civilization could only advance along one path. Our path. We feared what we didn't understand." Grace nodded respectfully to the elder statesman. "The past cannot be changed, but it can teach us. The Concordat exists because both humans and former council worlds learned from those mistakes." The transformation of galactic society had been remarkable. Dimensional shift technology had revolutionized everything from transportation to agriculture. Resources once thought scarce became abundant when access to parallel dimensional spaces was possible. Conflicts over territory became meaningless when expansion could occur across dimensional planes rather than competing for the same physical space. But the assembly today had gathered for a more urgent purpose. Long-range dimensional sensors had detected something approaching from beyond the galaxy's edge, a threat unlike anything encountered before. "The entity we've detected appears to exist across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously," explained Science Director Kyle Reed. "Initial data suggests it may be a predatory form of consciousness that consumes dimensional energy, the very force that powers our civilization." The assembly hall fell silent as the implications became clear. This was a threat that conventional weapons or strategies could not address. Tevnar spoke again, his voice frail but clear. "This is why humanity survived, and the Council did not. You prepared for challenges we couldn't even imagine." Grace nodded. "When humans first developed dimensional technology, we glimpsed these entities at the edges of our perception. We knew they would eventually notice our dimensional manipulations and be drawn to our galaxy." "You've been preparing for this for 3 centuries?" asked the representative from Betelgeuse, a former council stronghold. "Everything we've built, the dimensional network, the energy systems, the unified galactic economy, all of it was designed to create a civilization capable of responding to this threat," Grace confirmed. "If humans had remained isolated under Council control, we would all be defenseless now." For the first time, many representatives understood the true purpose behind humanity's patient, nonviolent approach to galactic unification. It had never been about revenge against the Council or even about freedom for its own sake. It had been about survival, not just for humans, but for all intelligent life. "The defense systems are ready," Kyle announced. "But they require something the old Council could never achieve: genuine cooperation across all species, sharing resources and knowledge without reservation." Grace stepped forward again. 300 years ago, the Council believed they were protecting the galaxy by controlling it. We offer a different path, one where we face challenges together, as equals. One by one, the representatives pledged their world's support. Even former Council loyalists, who had resisted human influence for generations, now recognized the wisdom of the path humanity had chosen. As the assembly concluded, Grace met privately with Tevnar. The ancient alien studied her with eyes dimmed by age, but still sharp with intelligence. "You never hated us," he said, realization dawning, "even after what we tried to do." Grace smiled. "Hatred would have been a luxury we couldn't afford. We were too busy building something better." Outside the assembly hall, the stars shimmered as dimensional barriers strengthened across the galaxy. The real test was coming, but for the first time in history, all sentient species faced it as a united force, just as humanity had always intended. The dimensional entity arrived without warning. One moment, the outer defense grid was reporting normal readings. The next, sensors across 27 dimensional planes simultaneously overloaded. In the command center of Stellar Concordat headquarters, emergency systems activated instantly. Kyle Reed stared at the display with a mixture of awe and terror. The entity appeared as a shifting void that didn't just occupy space. It warped the very fabric of dimensional reality around it. "It's bigger than our models predicted," he said to Grace Mitchell, who had just entered the command center. "And it's moving faster." Grace studied the readings calmly. "Activate the dimensional anchor network. All nodes, full power." Throughout the galaxy, thousands of installations that had been carefully positioned over centuries came to life. Each generated a specific frequency that reinforced the boundaries between dimensions, creating a lattice of stable space-time around the entity. "The dimensional predator is slowing," reported Susan Clark, the network coordinator. "Anchor points are holding at 87% efficiency." But the entity wasn't stopping. It pushed against the dimensional barriers, testing them, learning from each interaction. Where it encountered resistance, it shifted to adjacent dimensional planes, searching for weaknesses. "It's intelligent," Grace observed, "more so than we anticipated." On the outer colony of Haven 9, residents watched in horror as reality itself seemed to warp. Buildings flickered between existence and non-existence as dimensional stability failed. Emergency evacuation portals activated, whisking the population to safety moments before the entire settlement was consumed. Back at headquarters, the situation was growing dire. "We're losing anchor points in sectors 12 through 19, Kyle reported. "The entity is adapting to our containment strategies faster than we can adjust them." "Implement Phase Omega," Grace ordered quietly. Kyle looked up sharply. "That protocol has never been tested at full scale. The energy requirements alone could destabilize half the network." "We don't have a choice," Grace said. "If this entity breaches the inner systems, we lose everything." Phase Omega was humanity's final contingency plan, the true reason behind 3 centuries of technological development. It didn't aim to destroy the dimensional predator, which might be impossible, but to redirect it. Throughout the galaxy, dimensional technology that had been used for transportation, communication, and energy production was reconfigured. The network that united countless worlds would now serve a different purpose. "All systems aligned," Susan announced. "Ready on your command." Grace took a deep breath. "Begin the sequence." Across the galaxy, dimensional gateways activated simultaneously, creating a controlled cascade of dimensional energy that flowed away from populated areas. A river of power directed toward a single massive portal constructed in intergalactic space. The entity, drawn to the overwhelming concentration of dimensional energy, followed the path laid before it. In the command center, old Tevnar watched with rheumy eyes. "You're feeding it," he realized, "but directing what it consumes." Grace nodded. "We couldn't destroy it, so we're giving it what it wants while guiding it somewhere it can do no harm." The massive portal at the end of the energy cascade led to an empty parallel universe, one devoid of life, but rich in natural dimensional energy. A place where the entity could feed without threatening sentient beings. For 3 tense days, the galaxy held its breath as the dimensional predator followed the energy trail toward the portal. When it finally passed through, cheers erupted across 1,000 worlds. "Seal it," Grace ordered, and the portal collapsed behind the entity, trapping it in its new dimensional home. In the aftermath, the stellar concordat gathered once more. The unified response had succeeded, but at great cost. Dozens of worlds had suffered dimensional instability. Thousands of lives had been lost. Yet compared to total annihilation, it was a victory beyond measure. "This was just the first," Grace told the assembly soberly. "Our sensors detect others, still distant but approaching. The real work is just beginning." Across the chamber, representatives who had once been enemies now stood together, united by shared survival. The lesson humanity had tried to teach the old council was finally understood by all. True strength came not from control, but from cooperation. As the assembly disbanded to begin rebuilding, Kyle approached Grace privately. "Do you think they'll ever know the whole truth?" Grace smiled faintly. "That humans first encountered these entities on Earth. That the real reason we left wasn't the Council's ultimatum, but because we knew what was coming and needed to prepare the galaxy. Some secrets are better kept, Kyle agreed.